Ms. Sleightholm?
Aloha mai. Kaho'o kahi kanuha.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning.
I'm here. Aloha.
Your name?
Kaho'o kahi kanuha. Mahalo.
Thank you. Aloha, Mr. White.
Good morning.
I read in your written testimony that you went to the summit on October 5th of 2016. Is this correct?
Yes. Most recently. That's not the only time.
Thank you. And when you went to the summit, what did you see, smell, and hear on your visit?
I didn't smell anything that was notable. When we visited the site, I was obviously conscious of all of the astronomical facilities that were there. Things that I had not seen before were a couple of ahu that had been erected in the roadway. When I was previously there, there had not been any recent grading on the TMT site. There was when I went this time, so it updated my recollection of that area.
Thank you. So you didn't hear compressors, diesel engine noise from vehicles and generators?
Other than the vehicles that I was in, no.
So did you see, smell, or hear anything not consistent with an alpine, windswept stone desert?
I would have to say no. When I was down I'm talking about down at the TMT site.
Thank you. Did you see concrete foundations with metal rotating domes and metal shutters that could withstand 125-mile-per-hour winds?
I did see many of those up on the summit, but not on the TMT site.
So it didn't look like cinder hills, did they, up where?
Can you speak a little louder?
Is this better? So it didn't look like cinder hills up where you saw those?
I'm not sure I understand what you're...
So when I asked you if you saw rotating domes and metal shutters that could withstand those winds, they weren't just cinder cones?
No, when I looked up at where the existing observatories are, I of course could see those facilities.
Thank you. And you say on page 2 and 7 of your testimony that the proposed TMT would meet criteria number 4 of section 13-5-30C of the Hawaii Administrative Rules. That was correct?
This is which one now?
It's on page 2 and 7 of your testimony that the criteria number 4 was met.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you know that there are people like myself and my family that go up to the summit and the proposed TMT site to pray?
I did not know that you were one of those, but I knew that that was done, yes.
Thank you. And have you ever prayed or deeply meditated?
Yes, I have.
Would you consider it an intrusion to have to pray or deeply meditate amidst all these noises, fumes, excavation, construction, traffic on the summit at the proposed site?
You asked me a personal question, so of course you're going to get a personal answer. I actually have prayed and meditated in intensely noisy, disturbed, confusing situations. I've also done the same thing on high mountain summits where it's very quiet, or sometimes there's a lot of wind noise, but I've done it in all of those places.
So what was your answer? Was it yes or no?
My answer is that meditation is something that I personally am able to do, even when there's a lot of noise and a lot of other
Excuse me,
activities.
Mr. White.
And I think I'm asking more of personally for myself, but chanting and my kind of praying.
Just a minute, please. You want to finish your question, or?
No, I think he answered that.
Okay.
Thank
Do
you.
not answer, please, Mr. Sanderson. All right, thank you. And Mr. White, please answer.
Could you repeat I thought the end.
No, I'm done with that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
As the principal author of the CDUA, you did extensive research on the controversy over the proposal.
My focus wasn't on the controversy. My focus was on the facts, and I tried to draw them together as best as I could to present a balanced assessment that could go before first the department and then the board for consideration.
So you did do some research on the controversy?
We did not do primary research. We weren't out there looking at new things. We were reviewing all of the reports and plans that we could, trying to draw together information from that.
Thank you. And were you aware that NASA completed the first ever federal EIS conducted on Mauna Kea astronomical facilities development?
That NASA completed?
That NASA had completed the first ever federal EIS on Mauna Kea.
Not specifically, no.
Thank you. And were you aware that this EIS concluded the cumulative impact of the past, present, and reasonably foreseeable astronomy developments have resulted in significant adverse and substantial impacts to the cultural and natural resources?
Can you repeat that? I lost you halfway through. Just repeat the question, please. Do not answer.
Were you aware that this EIS concluded the cumulative impact of the past, present, and reasonably foreseeable astronomy developments have resulted in significant adverse and substantial impacts to the cultural and natural resources of Mauna Kea, and that was NASA Federal Environmental Impact Statement and OHA versus Sean O'Keefe, civil number 02-00227, July 15th of 2003.
Mr. Sanderson?
Objection. The cross-examiner is testifying, and the question is beyond the scope of Mr. White's direct.
I'm going to allow this question. It goes to the basis of his knowledge, and therefore it's challengeable as to his direct testimony.
Thank you.
Please answer if you are able.
Sure. As what we used as our principal source for the environmental impact statement
Wait,
was
Mr.
that,
White. Sir, just a minute. The question is, are you aware of what she described? That's your question.
I already said that I was not familiar with that document.
Thank you.
On page 13, you describe proposed noise mitigation at the site for operational noise. How about construction, vehicular noise, construction noise, excavation noise, concrete pouring noise, etc.?
When you say what about it, what specifically would you like me to address?
Well, what are the mitigations?
To the best of my knowledge, in terms of the construction noise, there are State Department of Health rules that regulate construction noise. There are vehicle noise regulations, again, at the state level. Those are all applicable.
How did you determine what would be acceptable impacts of noise, smell, visual impacts upon the community that I had identified?
We referred to plans, to regulations, to generally accepted standards in terms of trying to arrive at that and looking at the degree of change that would result from this proposed activity.
And if there were people that you had asked, who were they?
I don't know what you mean by people who we asked.
Did you ask community members, or you just referred to these accepted standards?
We used accepted standards.
Thank you. And on page 12 of your written testimony, you discuss measures being taken to meet criteria number 8, which states the proposed land use will not be materially detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. Is it true that there have been documented hazardous materials such as hydraulic fluid, mercury, and sewage spilled on the mountain from the existing telescopes?
There have been, and those were discussed in the application.
Thank you. And in your oral testimony, you mentioned a few times and in your written proper management. So I was wondering if it's true, in your opinion, that the mountain has to date been properly managed.
What I pointed out, I think, in my testimony is that I believe that proper management procedures are now in place. And I said earlier today that it's significantly different than it was in the previous century, if you want me to call it that. But the adoption of the master plan in 2000, and then the comprehensive management plan and all of the sub-plans have just radically altered the way the mountain is managed. And I believe that it's better. There are more management procedures in place on the mountain now than there are in virtually any other conservation district area in the state.
Right, but my question was, up until this point, has the mountain been properly managed?
Well, this point is now 6 years after the adoption of the comprehensive management plan. I think major efforts have been made since that time and before, but more intensively since then to do that. So I have to say, I believe that everybody's doing their very best, given the resources that are available, to do the right thing.
Thank you.
Can't say more than that.
And I don't have transcripts to refer to, so I'm sorry if this had been addressed before, but I couldn't verify that, so I might repeat myself or be repeating someone else. But on page 9 of your written testimony, you state, as documented in the FEIS for the proposed TMT project, as well as table 2-1 of the CDUA, the TMT management plan, the CMP and its subplans, proposed mitigation measures, and management actions that will prevent substantial adverse impact to the natural resources. So isn't it true that in the FEIS page S8, it specifically states, from a cumulative perspective, the impact of past and present actions on cultural, archaeological, and historic resources is substantial, significant, and adverse. These impacts would continue to be substantial, significant, and adverse with the consideration of the project and other reasonably foreseeable future actions. So isn't it true that the impacts are already substantial, significant, and adverse before the proposed project even begins construction?
I don't have the document in front of me, so I can't confirm that that's the exact wording. I think the point that's being made is...
Excuse me, sir, you've answered the question.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Sleightholm?
So referring to the CDUA R1 figure 7.9 on page 7-14.
This is figure 7.9.
This is referred to as the overview of TMT and dome design, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is it trying to illustrate?
The point that this was intended to illustrate was that every effort had been made to make the observatory structure as small as it could be, given the goal of increasing the resolution of the telescope. So just to very briefly to illustrate this, in round numbers, the largest dome on the mountain right now is about 150 feet high. This one is round number 185 feet. This increases the resolution. So we're talking about a 25–30% increase in height, and we're talking about probably a 7, 8, or 9 time increase in resolution. So people were working hard to do as well as they could with as small a thing as they could.
Thank you. At the top of the pointed structure within the dome, what is the part that extends above the apex of the frame?
Can you? I'm looking at the figure. So there's a reference to secondary mirror, but you're talking above that.
Yes.
The portions that I can see are portions of the structure needed to be able to open the dome to the sky. I'm not sure if you have a specific thing in that figure that you want me to.
Sorry. It's right where that X, kind of like that X is above the apex.
That X is on the line that's marked the pivot of the telescope.
Okay, thank you.
So that's simply to show that inside this dome, the telescope can move around, can rotate both on the vertical and the horizontal axis.
Thank you. How important is it that it has to extend above the apex of the frame?
I'm looking at the structure as it's depicted in this conceptual thing, and I would say that it couldn't be exactly there. There needs to be a structure above it to support the dome.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I think I'm referring to that little space above there, not necessarily the X. Sorry.
Well, that little space, if you look under the place where it says secondary mirror, it says a tight fit, 20 inches to reduce the size of the dome. So they've made this thing as close to the dome as they could. 20 inches is less than 2 feet.
Thank you. And so how was it important that it had to extend above the apex of the frame, or was it important?
The 20 inches you're talking about? I think, I'm not a structural designer, but 20 inches seems a fairly tight fit for me on something of this scale. Whether it could have been.
Is it possible that it could still function if it did not extend so far above the apex of the frame?
I don't know.
If that extended part was lowered to the apex of the frame, wouldn't that space now become a distance nearly twice the 20-inch distance that's shown, and thus make the situation not quite the tight fit that's noted? If it was extended.
If what was, I don't think I understand.
It's the tight fit that you're referring to. So if that was extended, or I'm sorry, if the extended part were lowered to the apex of the frame, wouldn't that space now become a distance nearly twice the 20 inches that's shown, and make the situation not quite such a tight fit?
I'm not the right guy. To me, the point to this graphic was that people were trying to keep the dome size.
Mr. White, if you know the answer to the question, please answer. If you don't know,
I don't know.
Say so.
Thank you. So wouldn't that tight fit only occur between the tip of the extended part of the inside of the dome, whereas the rest of the frame would be many inches, if not many feet and meters away from the dome?
Do not answer. Mr. Sanderson?
Call for speculation.
Yeah, Ms. Sleightholm, this witness has already said he doesn't know and he doesn't feel qualified to answer
Okay, thanks.
that question. So I'm going to sustain the objection and ask you to move to another question, please.
So he cannot answer any questions about this tight fit area?
It doesn't sound like he knows.
Okay, thanks.
That's
Referring-
correct. I don't.
Sure, I didn't ask you a question.
Referring to Exhibit C3 that is entitled Mitigation Measures, Reduce the Size and Visibility of TMT.
Can you speak a little slower and clearer, please?
Referring to Exhibit C3 that is entitled Mitigation Measures, Reduce the Size and Visibility of TMT, is this the exact same drawing that we've just finished discussing, 7.9?
I'm not sure where Exhibit C3 is.
I believe this was the TIO Exhibit C3.
This
If it's
this is a UH witness, so he may not have all the other exhibits. If you'd like to hand him a copy,
Sure.
and then we can all take a look at C3 because we all should have that.
So is Exhibit C3 the same as the figure 7.9 that we were just discussing?
It's definitely not identical. No.
Is your answer?
It is. The question was, is it the same? And my answer, this is what is being shown right now is not a reproduction of figure 7.9.
So it is not identical.
It's not identical.
Okay.
Thank you. As we were discussing, and I had questioned you about figure 7.9 on page 7-14, if I were to ask the same or similar questions about the current exhibit that we're looking at, would you answer these new questions the same as your prior answers?
The figure that's up here now has many things on it that were not in 7.9. So I don't feel able to directly answer your question.
Okay, so staying with this exhibit, in figure 5, that's on the left side of the page, visual impact mitigation. The figure.
So just, you're talking about the one that's
Right.
up.
Yeah, the same exhibit.
Wait, Figure 5 of what exhibit, please?
Oh, it's still Exhibit C3, but it's just the picture on the left side of the page.
Okay.
The figure attempts to illustrate that the use of a focal ratio of, and I'm sorry if I get this right because I'm not familiar with these things, but f1.0 would result in a dome 40% shorter than if a focal ratio of f1.75 would be used. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Is that the only reason for the short dome for mitigation?
I don't know if that's the only reason. I know that it was one of the reasons.
And then I just have a few more. Would you agree that a shortened dome that could possibly be characterized as mitigating would also mean that the dome would not have to be built as solidly and strongly as a taller dome?
As what?
A taller dome.
Are you able, do you know the answer to this question?
I don't know.
All right.
Thank you.
I don't think he's qualified to answer that question, is what I'm hearing.
Okay, thanks. I think that's all I have because he can't answer the rest of the questions, is what you're saying. He's not qualified to answer regarding the dome.
It doesn't sound like it from his answers and from his direct testimony in writing, but there are many other witnesses coming, so there may be other witnesses more qualified to answer those questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. White.